And this is Jen Gray, and welcome to Be Jennuine Podcast. It is my heart that by the end of this episode, you believe that your story matters and that your authenticity is your superpower. Welcome to the stage, Jen Gray. All right, friends, one quick thing before we jump in today's episode. I am so crazy excited to shout from the rooftops. Our podcast partners, our first partner is Dr. John D. Ambrosio. He is the owner, CEO, mastermind behind the Center for Life Enhancement. If you are anywhere within driving distance of Atlanta, Georgia, or you want to hop in an airplane, it's legitimately worth it. He helps people achieve optimal health and function through a unique whole body approach to chiropractic care. At the Center for Life Enhancement, he utilizes wellness stacking, combining biocharger, gentle yet precise chiropractic adjustments, zone technique and cranial release, and brain tap to restore balance and enhance the body's natural ability to heal. His focus is on optimizing function, helping clients move, feel, and live better every day. Hi, friends. I am super excited for today's episode. It's just me, and I want to dive through something that I've been mulling around with and something that's really, really impacted my life, especially as I even navigate having a podcast, right? With the whole purpose of having a podcast or you having a podcast is one purpose. That is to inspire someone to take action, and ultimately impact is figured out by, again, how much action is taken from the podcast. So today I want to talk about something that's going to be slightly uncomfortable, but I think if we peel back the onion layers and we actually deal with the truth, I believe it has the capacity to completely change our world, change our life, and change how we feel about even our own story. So let's just think about this question. Have you ever shared part of your story, part of your truth at any point, and you've kept out some of the details? Maybe you brushed up the edges a little bit before you shared it. You know, we could all think of people sharing stories about fishing, right? What always happens, you go fishing and all of a sudden the fish was this big, but every time you tell the story, what happens, right? The fish just magically gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And in our own truth and in our own story, it can actually even take hold even deeper than that. And so I want to share part of my journey with you in hopes of you connecting with it. And maybe it shifts your mindset just a little bit on the power of your real story, and how when I say that your authenticity is your superpower, the reason I say that is your authenticity is you showing up as fully who you are, right? That means the bumps, the bruises, the scars, the wounds, you're showing up as that person. It doesn't mean airing your dirty laundry constantly. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But what it does mean is when you are sharing your story, understanding that the hard parts are actually what's going to connect you with somebody. So I'll be straight up. So even in this whole pursuit of speaking, one of the big things that I struggled with, especially at the beginning, was wrapping my mind around the fact that I didn't have this huge major story of success. And in my life, I'm looking at people that I admire, like let's say Jamie Kern Lima. First of all, you may have noticed in season 2, I have an audio that says, "Welcome to the stage, Jen Gray." If you don't connect those dots and you're not familiar with that voice, that is in fact Jamie Kern Lima's voice. We'll take you back on that story. So last summer, I listened to and watched Jamie Kern Lima's first episode of her podcast. And of all people, she had Oprah as her first guest. I'm like, it's pretty cool. And with that, it was this cool moment of listening to Oprah say, "Welcome to the Jamie Kern Lima show." And then sitting in that moment just for a second and pausing long enough to say, you did it. Like, you actually got to the point where Oprah Winfrey is freaking saying, "Welcome to the Jamie Kern Lima show." So I had made a story about that and said, man, I'm going to keep going, because one day I'm going to be on a stage and I'm going to hear Jamie Kern Lima say, "Welcome to the stage, Jen Gray." Because like in my world and in my dream life, I would love to speak alongside Jamie Kern Lima. I believe our messages of worthy and the hope of living in your authenticity totally align. And so one day it will happen. And until then, I will keep going. And that was the point of my story, was to say, hey, I'm going to keep showing up, because as I keep showing up, the way I'm going to get on a stage alongside her is by continuing and never giving up. The only way we fail as if we give up. I say it all the time because it's so, so, so true. So anyways, so I sent that story and she responds back, y'all. Let me just take you through that moment. So I was at the gym. I listened to the podcast at the gym. I recorded the story in my car. As you guys, if you follow me on social media, I'm constantly recording car stories. I recorded a car story, tagged her in the car story, and now I'm driving from the gym to my house. As I'm driving, I see a notification pop up on my screen. It said, Jamie Kern Lima. I was like, okay, all right. Maybe she just liked my story, right? It's messages pop up for any kind of notification. And then I saw it was an actual message she had sent. And then I saw it was an actual voice recording. And so I went inside and I listened. And first I was like, oh my gosh. Tears started welling up in my eyes. And I'm like, I cannot listen to this now. I don't know if it's going to go away. Cause sometimes in Instagram, if you listen to an audio, after you listen, it's gone. I'm like, okay, whatever she said, I know I'm going to want to save. And so I've got to wait until I get to the house and I pull in the driveway and I figured out how to screen record because I don't know how I live in, this was 2024 and I had never screen recorded anything before. I'm like, I got to figure this out first. So I got the screen record set up and then I went and I hit play. And it was Jamie Kern Lima herself responding to my story and saying, welcome to the stage and great. And she said, I want you to know that I'm practicing because I'm believing that one day this will come true. Y'all, that was my freaking Oprah Winfrey moment of my hero and someone that I admire because of the journey that it took her to get to where she is. And if you don't know her story, she's the founder of It Cosmetics. And that may sound glorious and beautiful and all of that, and sold her company to L'Oreal for $1 billion. I said $1 billion, not $1 million. Huge success. But what I find so amazing and so inspirational about Jamie Kern Lima is not the fact that she's a billionaire. She sold her company to L'Oreal. The fact is of the years and years and years that she barely scraped by working with her husband and focusing on the fact that her dream will come true if she just never gives up. And she experienced failure after failure and rejection after rejection after rejection. And then ultimately she got a spot on QVC and the rest is history. Those are the kind of stories that we're inspired by, y'all. If I just said she's the founder of It Cosmetics and a billionaire, you probably would have thought that was cool. But go read her book, Believe It. Go read her book, Worthy. And connect with the fact that she literally was down to negative, I don't even know how much in her account, because she'd invested all of her time and all of her money into this dream. And then you read Worthy, where she doubted every bit of her self-worth and she understood then where her worthiness came from. And I don't know what you believe and what kind of faith you have, but I believe in God and I know my worthiness is defined by who my creator created me to be. And our worthiness is not defined by what anybody else defines it as. And so when you read her story and know what she went through to be able to make those statements, y'all, those are the kind of stories I connect to. So when I started my podcast, I knew that those are the kind of stories I connected to, which is why, if you've been around here since episode 1, I was really candid in saying, hey, y'all, if you are looking for a 40-year-old woman who is making millions of dollars and is going to teach you how to make millions of dollars, I can send you to some really great podcasts. But if you're looking for someone who's 40 years old, a single mom of 4 kids, who's given up everything and a dumpster fire her life to the ground and is building from the ashes and is not stopping until her dreams are fulfilled, and the dreams include impacting other people to step out with a leap of faith and share their story and ignite passion in other people because of their shared experiences. So I just started. And even though I said that, even though that was my words, I will tell you that I still doubted getting on stages and saying, oh my gosh, what if they find out that I'm still in the financial rebuilding? Does that make me lose credibility? What do I know is true? What I know is that that's not true. But what our mind will play tricks and try to teach us is that that is true. And then what happens is that we literally count ourselves out for reasons that we should actually count ourselves in. Because have you ever been in a room where people are sharing their successes and it feels just stoic and it feels very transactional? I believe that we don't connect to people by their successes. We connect to people by how they've overcome. Think about the most moving speeches you've ever heard. They're coming from people who have been at the depths of nothing, and they have built a life that they are proud to live. And it's a life built on core values of honor and integrity and character and adding value and empathy and kindness and excellence. Those are the stories that we connect to. So then why, when we talk about our story, do we want to leave out the parts that are actually the parts that connect us to somebody? That's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the fact that you are adding shame to parts of your story that actually give you a reason for someone to listen. And I want to connect you even with my own story. Rewind back to, I don't even know when Gmail started. I need to look this up. I believe it's somewhere around 2010, maybe 2012, somewhere around there, when Gmail was even a thing. And so as soon as it was a thing, I'm like, I'm getting a Gmail address. And I got it as bejennuine@gmail.com. This was pre-branding. This was pre-podcast. So it was Be Jennuine with a G, BEGENUINE @gmail.com. You can still reach me there. And I was so excited because I wanted to get a website. I wanted it to be for high school girls. I wanted to create a whole space where I encouraged and challenged girls to be genuine. Here's the problem. I was living at half truth at best in my life. Y'all, I was traveling around and I was speaking on stages and I was reminding girls that their beauty is way, way, way deeper than their skin. Their beauty is defined by how they love others and their heart for other people. And that's still true. And I still believe that. But the problem is I missed a huge opportunity to connect on a genuine level. Because let me rewind back to part of my story. So when I was in middle school, my hair started falling out. I went to a dermatologist and the dermatologist told my parents and I in the same room that I needed to see a psychiatrist because I was pulling out my hair. And what I remember about that day, if you've ever never heard my story before, what I remember most about that day was the look on my parents' faces. And it was a look of horror and embarrassment. And immediately right then, I'm like, I don't know why I'm pulling out my hair. I am 13 years old and I don't have a clue why this is happening. It's like this subconscious thing that I'm doing. And then by the time I realize it, I'm like, why did I do that? And I'm filled with shame. But I couldn't even have those conversations because instead, in my own mind, I believed that my responsibility was to protect the other people around me. And that ended up creating a lot of trauma loops in the rest of my life because that mentality affected not just my hair condition, it affected my relationships. It affected my view of myself. It affected friendships and so on and so on. Because when you lose your truth for the sake of somebody else, you have genuinely begun living a lie. And so for me, in that journey, we ended up going to Emory University and I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. Do you know what that does for someone who's living in a lie, who's scared to death to be found out because you're scared of bringing shame to your family? It was like the ticket out of jail card, like get out of jail free card. It was like, okay, I now have a diagnosis that now gives me this label that I'm more comfortable with because the label of you need psychiatric help and you need to go and have behavioral therapy versus you have an autoimmune disease that's not in your control just seemed more palpable. It's like I was talking to someone else and they said they have a mental illness diagnosis and they're like, I just wish I had a diabetic diagnosis. It just sits well. Sits better with other people. And I knew when they said that, I knew what they meant because I felt that. Because my diagnosis just seemed a little bit better, right? It seemed like, oh, poor Jen has this autoimmune disease. You know what the fact was? Oh, poor Jen, her trauma has caused her body to start to try to heal and start to try to give peace and control where there seems like no control in her life with an alcoholic dad. And therefore, poor Jen needs help. Her body is crying out, this waving the right flag and begging for a lifesaver to say, wait, I need help. Things aren't working right. And I'm responding wrong. And I didn't give my body what it needed. I didn't give my mind what it needed. Because like the person with the mental illness diagnosis who said, I wish I just had a diabetic diagnosis because it sits well with other people. Y'all, we got to do better. Just like diabetes, just like a heart attack, just like a heart condition. We're not going to fault somebody for taking heart medication, which is why we're not going to fault somebody for taking medication because their brain, caused by 1,000 different reasons, is not wired right now. But what's amazing is there's medication to help that. And yet we bring shame to that. Or maybe it's not a third person thing. Maybe this is a personal thing and you've brought shame to that because you've believed for some reason that you are less of a human because you have struggles. And y'all, that actually is what proves every single day that you can overcome your struggles because you are still standing. Like maybe somebody just needed to hear that today. Like, y'all, this life is nuts. Our struggles are nuts. But when we start reminding people that, yeah, what you see on the outside is actually this really pretty picture of this struggle behind me. Like, just imagine if you've ever gone through a divorce, what if people in your life were more honest with you about the realities of marriage? What if like our parents, like, were real about marriage instead of just hiding marriage to try to protect us? And so then when we had our own marriages, we didn't know how to navigate that. Like, what if we normalize the fact that we don't all have this financial literacy thing figured out? Man, have you studied successful people? They've all lost millions of dollars. Like, I can't even imagine losing 7 figures. I'm trying to make it, forget losing it, right? Like, that's the reality. But until you're around like really solid, secure leaders, you don't even know that that's a reality because somehow we paint the fact that our failures are keeping us from success when actually our failures are leading us to success. Andrew Cordell, he's a phenomenal leader. I was at an Aspire Tour conference in Atlanta at the beginning of January, and it was just such a cool day. Like, I learned so much. It just had like incredible speakers. But what I loved most about it was he did an event called Aspire Stages, which was teaching speakers, how to speak in the art of communication. And it was fascinating. You could tell it was his passion, and he's so good at it. And he wrote down like his whole speech and why he did what he did. As a member of the audience, you don't think that psychological about why he's saying what he's saying because there was no like manipulation in it. And I don't know about you guys, but I've experienced a lot of sales conversations that seem super manipulative. And what he taught was how we can sell, whether it's a product or it's inspiration, and not be manipulative. How we can genuinely connect to someone's heart, remind them that they're the hero, we're going to be their guide, and we're going to help take them from where they're dissatisfied to where they want to go. But one of the key parts of his first keynote was he talked about wealth. The dude sold businesses for hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, he's stupid rich. But he didn't tell you he's stupid rich. You had other people that like introduced and like kind of alluded to it. You know what he told you? The dozens of houses he's had to foreclose on, the bankruptcies that he's experienced. And what's insane, when he reminded us that that was his tactic, what he wanted you to know is, hey, you were already led on to the fact that I've made millions of dollars, but I wanted people to connect with me because right now you may not be able to connect with the millions of dollars. You may be able to connect with the fact that your dream just landed you in bankruptcy. And I want to give somebody hope that if they just hold tight, and they shift some things, they learn some new things, they too can make the hundreds of millions of dollars if that's what they are striving to make. How insane is that? And when he pointed it out, and literally then they were offering this weekend of a wealth building weekend to learn how the wealth build wealth. I'm like, he literally just told us all the ways he failed, and people were like, sign me up, I want to learn what this guy's done. His authenticity was a superpower in that conversation because you know what would have happened? If he had gotten up there and said, you know what, the wealthy have a special way of doing it. You don't know it. I know it because I'm wealthy. I've made hundreds of millions of dollars and et cetera, et cetera. And all he focused on was the pros of his life or the success of his life. I guarantee you the attendance would have been like this big because it would have felt super manipulative and you wouldn't have connected. Because you guys, your vulnerability is what connects you with somebody else. So like this new friend that I met with who has the mental illness, who was describing their success and their massive success, and then just happened to mention that related to another conversation about the mental illness. And they expressed it in embarrassment. And I'm like, how powerful would it be for you to share your story that not in spite of the mental illness, but with the mental illness, you have created such wealth and success for your family that it's unbelievable. You have literally have generational wealth that was built with this obstacle that culture would say, hold you back. It's inspiration. Because you know what? You know what I tell people? You know what I remind people? I love looking like the most like the worst person in the room when I'm on a stage, because you may not be able to connect with the fact of giving up custody of your kids and fighting for what you think was right and hurt people. And out of your hurt, you create a life that you're not proud of and all these things and all the ways that you would be like, oh my gosh, Jen, really? But you know what that does? It reminds you that, hey, maybe your story isn't that extreme. But you know what you're causing yourself to do? Doubt yourself for way less things that I have in my world that I could doubt myself over. Way bigger things that I could just throw in the towel and give up. But everything shifts when you reframe your story and you understand that your obstacles can either be shame or your obstacles can be connection. And do you know who has the power to shift that? You can have the same story and you can either portray this story that makes you feel better about yourself, but you want to know what that version of your story does? Completely annihilates the fact that you would ever have any kind of impact and inspiration on somebody else. Because inspiration comes out of overcoming. Overcoming only happens because you've had something to overcome. Whether it's a diagnosis, it's a breakup, it's a divorce, it's a failure, whatever your obstacle looks like. The fact that you are where you are now after going through that is where your superpower is. So I want you to think about the fact of be genuine. Right? So it's interesting that I even chose to reuse that. And it's almost like I wanted to come back and use that phrase and actually use it for good. Because another thing that Andrew shared, he talked about, it was so funny. He was talking about authenticity. He's like, this is such a buzzword. Like all these people are talking about authenticity. And I just think it's insanity. And most of the people who use the word authenticity are the least authentic people. And I'm looking around, y'all, and I'm wearing a shirt that says really big on the back, your authenticity is your superpower. And for half a second, I wanted to slump down in my chair and be like, oh my gosh, I'm on the front row and my shirt says authenticity. This is my brand. This is what I speak about. And he's literally annihilating my message. And then he continues. And he said, the reason that it's such a buzzword and the reason that so many people use it in a surface manner is because it sounds good. But true authenticity comes from actual deep work. It comes from this kind of work of replacing your shame with connection, with replacing your shame with the fact that you've overcome. It's being comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you are who you are because of what you've went through, not in spite of what you went through. And when you have that mental shift, that's when you can step into your authenticity. Otherwise, you're giving people a fake message with a fake formula that nobody can actually follow. Because if you start a business and act like as well, you're going to start it and you're just going to keep on going and it's going to be this slow grind until you reach your dreams. What happens when somebody jumps in that industry and it goes like this? Actually, they like go down and they're losing money and it takes 5 years to ever even make a profit. What happens when people do that? You know what they're thinking? Man, Jen told me this was going to be way easier. There must be something wrong with me. And now we've placed shame on somebody else where they're feeling some type of way and some type of insecurity because some leader has led on to the fact that entrepreneurship or starting something is easy. If it was easy, we'd all be out here doing it. And if you've ever tried to build something, you and I both know that this is not easy. But it's so, like every day I wake up and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Going and having a 9 to 5 would not be easy with my schedule with my kids. And also building these multiple businesses as a single mom is not easy. But the trade-off of time with my kids and the flexibility to be room mom and be at baseball practices, and like that's it's non-negotiable for me. So either I make this work or I have to give up everything that really matters to me and I have to go and then make money elsewhere. And I'm not knocking a 9 to 5. You may have a 9 to 5 that you absolutely love, and I love that for you. And maybe your world works around that schedule. Perfect. That's awesome. For me, it just simply doesn't. So what I have to do is I have to make it work. And there's a lot of sacrifices that come along with that. So I want anybody else out there, like if you're starting a podcast, I don't want to tell you it's all easy. No, having content weekly isn't always easy. Nope. It's why if you go back and look at my first year, do you know how many episodes I put out? 26. You know what that averages? 2 a month. Do you know what my goal was? Once a week. I didn't hit it. But what I did do is I kept going. And then I shifted things. And I mentally stepped into a new version of myself and said, no, this Jen shows up week in and week out. And you are going to block out time to actually prepare for your podcast in a deep way so you are never going to wonder when you record this what you are going to talk about. Because this is my avenue to empower you to take your story, run with it, and impact other people through it. And if I believe that that message is worth sharing, then guess what I've got to do? The work behind it, just like you. Which is why I say the only way to fail is if you never give up. Don't work 4 years and expect it to be easy because somebody on the internet said, you're going to get rich quick. And then you give up because you're like, man, clearly I'm not cut out for this. No, you are. Just don't give up before your success is right on the other side of that. I want you to rethink your life. Even think about like little white lies that you've told yourself about maybe somebody else impacted you or you listened to a podcast. And I hear thought leaders do this all the time where they never give credit to their thoughts. They just speak it as if it's their own. I love when people give credit to where they heard it because then I can go and find that source and I can learn from that source too. That's why I name drop Jamie Kern Lima or Mel Robbins or Ed Milet or Jesse Lee Ward or other people in my life who are impacting this because I didn't get to where I am without having other successful thought leaders helping with their resources to help me shift my mindset. I talk about Dr. John all the time, who you hear is a sponsor of this podcast because that man and his practice is way more than chiropractic. It is literally shift the way that my brain and my body communicate, and my head and my heart and my soul are more connected because of the things that he does. And it's insanity. But when we give credit to the people who add value to us, then it reminds people that, man, if you don't have it all figured out, guess what? It's okay. Go get these resources that I've found. Read these books, listen to these podcasts, find your people, find the people that you want to be influenced by and just dive in instead of acting like, oh, let me tell you all this wisdom that I found just by living my life and here with my little success story of life that's never hard. Not believable. You're losing people because people do business with those they know, they like, and they trust. When I hear something that sounds too good to be true, I don't trust it. Other people don't either. You don't either. So stop thinking that your hard times and your struggle makes your success less worthy of cheering on. I want you to know that it makes you more relatable, more connective, and literally will cause other people to believe in themselves to get through the hard days and get to where you are and beyond. So y'all, we gotta get more comfortable in our shoes. We've got to remember the things that we've overcome and be vulnerable enough to share those things so people can connect with us. Because now in sharing my truth and my true story of having a condition that is called trichotillomania that I struggled with for decades, I can connect with other people that actually, sorry, I got hair in my mouth. I was trying to stay focused, but I can't, ADD. Literally, you've got to remember that you're going to be able to connect if you actually share your true story. And now I get to connect with people who actually have similar story than me. And I never, ever, ever, ever would have had impact on them if I had shared the autoimmune disease. Because you know what? An autoimmune disease feels like it's something completely out there. And it gives people a complex of, oh man, I wish mine was that. But instead I have this other label that feels like icky and gross and like condemning. When the reality was, I was pursuing what I was pursuing in my life with what else I had in my life. And instead of using it as a label, I've used it as an opportunity to learn about traumas and learn about how things affect your mindset and learn how to trust yourself and learn how to heal and learn how to forgive myself. And that only happened when I looked at myself in the mirror and said, Jen, we're going to deal with what actually is going on. And we're going to live in your truth. And your truth is what's going to help connect you with somebody else and point to the source of what's ultimately set my life free. You guys, there's so much power in your story, and I want you to believe it. I want you to embrace it. I want to hear about how you're using your story to impact other people. I want you to shoot me a DM, send me an email. I already gave you my email address. I want to hear your story, and I want to hear how you're using it to bring up that next person right behind you who needs your truth. And you guys, I love you and I believe in you. And that may sound so weird because I may not have met you, but I will never be the kind of person who hates people for no reason. So I'm going to love you for no reason until we meet and I find the millions of reasons there are to love you. Keep being genuine. Step into your truth. And y'all, your authenticity is your superpower. Love you guys.